Welcome to the Friday Night Drive Podcast South and West Edition, the Corncast. I'm Daily Chronicle sports editor Eddie Carifio. He's Shaw Sports Regional Editor J.T. Pedelty. Week 7, buddy.
We're in that last trimester here of the regular season. It seems weird saying trimester, like using it like that, but yeah. Very, very excited. We just started.
No more flying. I mean, you need the doctor's permission if you're going to fly at this point of the year.
Yes. We just said no hot tubs. We just said Friday night, or on FridayNightDrive.com, we just started this week all our playoff outlooks. They are awesome. If no one's checked it out, I did mine for my markets. The Joliet Morris area, and the Ottawa, LaSalle, Peru area, and I finished them, and it got me so jacked for these final 3 weeks, because you see all the different ways teams could play out. You see 1 in 5 teams that have a coin flips chance at the playoffs because they could win their conference, or you see 4 and 3 or 4 and 2 teams that are sitting there. It's like, I don't know if they can get in, man. So many do or die games, and a lot of them, you think of do or die games being in week 9, but in the schedule, realistically, there's a lot of them this week. I know we're going to talk about 1 or 2 that, if a team doesn't win here, it's hard to envision them finding that magical 5th win down the stretch. So just an awesome time of year, Eddie.
Yeah, like you said, we'll get into it, but when those 3 and 4 win teams are playing each other in this week, if you're especially 3 and 3 teams playing each other, it's a really fun week. Obviously, week 9 probably takes the cake, but week 7 slept on, I think. So we should probably jump right into it. And let's start with Rochelle Catlin. That's what I want to hop into here. Obviously, Catlin coming off a big win at Sycamore. They come in 4 and 2. Now looking to continue that momentum against Rochelle. Since Michael Thorgeson took over 3 years ago at Catlin, they hadn't beaten Sycamore, Morris, or Rochelle. The asterisk is that they didn't play Rochelle in 2023 because that was the they were pairing off with the KRC, and they were in different sides. But still, got that signature win. Want to keep it rolling. At this point, their playoff seeding seems secure, or their playoff berth seems secure. Now they're just trying to improve that seeding a little bit. A big one from Shell's standpoint, coming in 3 and 3. Obviously, the big story here is Dylan Manning was hurt during the Morris game. I believe he collapsed after the game. They had to take him to Loyola downtown in Chicago. They've been posting updates on him, which is just, I think, really great that the Rochelle football team has been doing that, putting on daily updates. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of interest in this. People, are rooting for Dylan, want to help him get better. So it's nice seeing that seeing them do that. Also, I was talking to Thorgeson, and he said before the game against Rochelle, it's also Catlin's homecoming, during the coin flip, they're going to do a moment of silence for Manning. That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's a really good thing to see. Yeah,
that's really cool. And, you mentioned there's a lot of interest in this, and I think that's certainly true. But I think even beyond that, there's a lot of concern, like a lot of genuine, we all love the game of football. It is a violent game. It is a physical game. That's what football is, and it's one of the things we love about it. But these things happen rarely, but when they do happen, kind of everyone, you might be the fiercest rivals, trash talking, hit each other as hard as you can. But man, those players are all a brotherhood, at the end when they're shaking hands, even if they don't mean good game when they say it. When something like this happens, you realize, you are absolutely a brotherhood, and all the families, and that includes us as sports journalists who cover these games. I would venture to say we love the game. I don't think there's a coach in that we cover that would probably agree with us, but I would venture to say we love the game and these athletes just as much as the coaches do, just as much as the players do. That's why we've chosen this for a profession, and why they choose it for their extracurricular, or why they choose it for their profession. We all love this game. When something happens like that, it's a hit to all of us. I like you said, I really appreciate that they're providing updates. Some people kind of choose to close things off and kind of go quietly when things like this happen. I'm probably guilty of being a person like that. But it's I think it's fantastic when so many people are concerned that they have been sharing updates and that they're having this moment. And it's been great to see. And also the updates have been increasingly positive from everything I've seen for that young man. So outstanding.
Yeah, concern is the great word for it, and I'm glad they're doing that, and I'm glad that the if that comes to fruition before the game, the moment of silence, that's also a great thing to see.
Agreed. And as for the game itself, we talked about Kaneland. You kind of mentioned a few times, I feel, in the few years that we've been doing this podcast, kind of Kaneland's been knocking at the door. Maybe that door's opening up here, Eddie. They got that win over Sycamore. That Sycamore Morris game maybe has lost a little bit of its luster that it's had in past years, the game that's coming up. That said, I don't think anyone would be stunned if Sycamore played Morris really tough and maybe even beat them. I mean, it would be an upset, sure, but it would be stunning. No, I don't think it'd ever be stunning if Sycamore, beat Morris or vice versa. So there's the conference titles in the picture. And when you're in a conference that we talk about every week, the Interstate 8, that conference title isn't just a thing on a banner. That's a real accomplishment to win this, this conference. So that's also in play here. If either Kaneland or Rochelle, I think they both have one loss.
Because I remember it was a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's true anymore, but at one point, Joe Ryan, the coach at Sycamore, had told me that he had actually reached the semifinals of the state playoffs more than they won conference championships. So, getting that conference title, like you said, it really is a big deal. So,
yeah, and I apologize. Rochelle has 2 conference losses, not 1. So yes. I apologize. I did miss that one, but yeah, it should be really awesome. Yeah, I know. I live in Streeter, and kind of they have 1 playoff win in their history, and over Normal U High in 2008, I think it was. But great team. Streeter had a fantastic team this year. They didn't win the conference. They lost a close game to Sterling, I think, to open the conference or second week of conference play. Then they rolled from there, beat Geneseo for the only time in school history. They can have a playoff win. They can have this and that. They couldn't have the conference. When you're in a real tough football conference, sometimes, playoff wins, playoff deep runs happen more often than a conference championship. So that's on the table here for Kaneland if things play out right, at least the possibility of it. So
yeah, it's a longer shot, but like I said, like you said, it probably would be an upset Sycamore over Morris. We'll talk about that next week. But yeah, it's a longer shot, but 8-1 looks good, although that's probably going to be tough. Getting way ahead, but they're no, it's going to be a solid year either way for them. Move on there. I know there was one down your way, and we kind of hinted at it a little bit, and that's Reed Custer Herscher, and this kind of seems like it's a big one.
Yeah, we talked about we kind of teased that some of these week 7 games are basically like week 9 games for teams, and this is kind of one of those ones. You look at it. If you look at the record, you're like, oh, well, Reed Custer's 3-3, Herscher's 4-2. But Reed Custer, for all intents and purposes, is a 4-3 football team. They have a lot forfeit bye coming from Lyle in week 9. So they're basically sitting at 4 wins just like Herscher is. So somebody is probably, weird things happen in the playoffs and playoff points and 4 and 5 teams and whatever. But in all likelihood, someone's going to punch their ticket to the playoffs. Someone that hasn't been there in a few years is going to punch their tickets to the playoffs this Friday in Herscher. I got to see Herscher play last week against Streeter. I think they'd be the first to say that they probably didn't play their best game. Streeter was within 1 score with about 6, 7 minutes left. Sorry, but when the Tigers needed their best, they found a way to give their best. Players like Tanner Jones, their quarterback, Reed Laird, Dylan Bright, and Mason Roberts had a huge game for them. They get a fumble with about 8 minutes left as Streeter was driving to tie it, and then punch it in themselves, make it a 2-score win, get to 4 wins, and now they're knocking on the door of the playoffs. And Reed Custer, Eddie, I mean, this has just been such a great turnaround season for them. First year coach Joe Turek, just an amazing job for them after a 1-win season, and that 1 win came against a team that's not even fielding a varsity team this year. So that's where Reed Custer was last year. This year, they're 1 win from the playoffs. This is where they need to get it, though, because they can't get a win in week 9 aside from the forfeit. You can't get 2 wins in week 9, and week 8's Wilmington. So this is probably the win and you're in, complete your story for the WWE fans. This is Reed Custer's moment here. If they can get Herscher, I think it should be a really good football game.
Yeah, no, obviously Reed Custer's a really good, like you said, really good feel-good story. And who was the FND pick in this one? Because I was looking at it going back and forth, trying to figure it out. I assume you guys probably went Herscher, is my guess.
Let me take a look. That was a Seuss.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I figured.
No, that's I'm curious myself now that you brought it up, and so yeah, if you would here talk some nonsense for a minute, and I will look that up.
Well, I could rant about 6-7, but no, it's with Reed Custer. Like I said, one win last year, coming back, and this is their shot. I mean, because they, you said it, but they have to get that win this week because obviously, I mean, anything could happen. That's why you play the game, but you don't want to be dependent on having to beat Wilmington to make the playoffs. It'd be a lot easier to take care of it before that. So
exactly,
from their standpoint, just huge.
Yes, and Seuss's pick is the Hersher Tigers to get that 5th win and go back to the playoffs. I think that's probably I really think this could go either way. I think Hersher probably has a slightly more impressive resume. They came into the season as a team in the Illinois Central 8 that kind of everyone saw, man, they're on the verge of something here. They're on the rise. I think I even put it in our conference preview for Friday Night Drive. Hersher is a team that thought to be on the rise this year, and they've lived up to that. Reed Custer, this is kind of surprising. People expected maybe some improvement, but a new head coach, you don't really know what to expect. And, they're going to finish the year at least 4-5, and they have a great chance to make the playoffs if they can win this one.
We should keep the forward momentum going. Go up to the KCR, Sandwich and Woodstock. You had noted that one. Seems like Sandwich absolutely needs a win in this one.
Yeah. This is one I brought it up, wanted to talk about on the podcast, for basically 2 reasons. One, big playoff implications for both teams. Sandwich, can't suffer another loss. Woodstock at 4 wins, knocking on the door there. Sandwich 2-4, Woodstock 4-2. So they're both alive. Both teams will probably end up on the bubble. So, any win you can get, anything you can get is going to be huge there. And the second reason is, we mentioned kind of what did FND pick? This is the 2nd straight game where we're like, I don't know. We had a little bit of a disagreement between those of us who cover those markets as to who we'd pick in this one. The Friday Night Drive pick officially ended up being Woodstock. I will make friends in Kendall County by saying that I like Sandwich in this one, just looking at the common opponents, how they did against them. Scores are somewhat similar. I feel like Sandwich's backs are against the wall a little more. However, the game is up at Woodstock. So I don't know. I think this should be a really good one. Sandwich has a great player, Nick Michalek. But I think he either just broke 1,000 yards or is about to break 1,000 yards for the season. He's the team's leading tackler. He's just a stud. So I'm very interested to see kind of where this one goes. I think there's a path there for Sandwich to get to one of those exciting Week 9 games where they need to beat a right now 1-loss Marengo team to get in. I think that could be a really cool matchup. The way Sandwich plays football. They're that type of team that's built for cold weather, gotta have it games. When you're playing a great offense, they can take the air out of the ball, run the clock, eat up yards 3 at a time. So I think this is a really good matchup in the Kishwaukee River. I think it could go either way.
Absolutely agree. Is that a dynamite drop in there?
I thought
this school's really paying off.
Yes. Good reference.
Thank you. On that note, I think we should probably bring in Hawks at this point. Talk a little, again, more down your way. My man, Brian, how's it going?
Hey, good morning, gentlemen.
Hawks, what's going on, man?
Living the dream, like I tell everyone else.
Exactly. Well, hey, thank you for dropping in with us. We, Eddie and I were kind of looking at ideas for guests this week, and I kind of mentioned, those Chicagoland Prairie. Yeah, and we scraped the bottom of the barrel.
It ran out. And
we had no ideas.
We got to now.
Yeah, we had no ideas. So we're like,
after 6 no's, you were our first choice for our number 7 guy. So
no, I get it. Well, that's good.
But honestly, a lot of matchups down here with teams that you've probably covered more than anyone else. Kind of my first one that comes to mind is, we'll talk about Chicagoland Prairie's teams. St. Bede 2-4, Seneca 6-0. This is the last Chicagoland Prairie Conference game for these 2 teams. Who knows? Maybe ever. I don't know what's going on with that conference now that it's down to 4 teams. If they're gonna keep it around or go independent, or I'm certain I've heard repeatedly they're looking for partners to maybe build something more solid and long lasting. But this one I know you've covered Seneca multiple times. Have you seen St. Bede? I saw St. Bede early in the year at Eureka.
No, I've not.
Okay. But, just talking from the Seneca side of things, they're a perfect 6-0. last week, Cam Shree.
Try.
I knew whatever I said, it would be the other one.
Yeah.
That's why we're writers, folks, not broadcasters. Cam Shrye had a huge game for them. Gunnar Varland's had the quarterback some huge games for him. But in general, they kind of spread it around on offense. But would I be wrong in saying that, as great as their skill position players have been, the star of this team might be the O-line?
Yeah, I think it actually, the O-line, and it has been for 4 or 5 years since Terry Maxwell, the head coach, took over. I think they go hand in hand. Their backs are first of all, what they do, they run the power T. They do it really good. Everybody, knows their jobs. And I think the backs, they have very talented, athletic running backs. They have a quarterback that's athletic and can run. And they're all tough. They all carry the ball well. They block well. They fake well. And then you've got 5 guys on the offensive line that are big. They know what they're doing. And it just, like last week against Marquette. And I think Marquette's defense played pretty well. But I think I've thought that in a couple of Seneca games this year. And then you look down at the stat sheet and they ran for 400 yards. And yards are, that you can take it or leave it sometimes with yardage. But yeah, I wish I had their names, all of them. And I know a couple, but I don't want to say 1 or 2 and then leave some guys out. But that's
the coach's sunset is obviously
I've done stories on them. That's how good they are. But I wouldn't shortchange the skill players either. They're pretty good. So, but and they're also very first to say when I ask them about their stats after a game, those guys up front are, the guys. So,
yeah. And for anyone who hasn't seen Seneca play or a similar team, Hawks mentioned the power T offense. Imagine the wing T. This is like the wing T's wing T. This is like the wing T taking the bells and whistles out of the wing T, which is now considered super conservative. And, this is going a whole nother level in that. Don't get me wrong, they look for their big plays, but Hoxie mentioned everyone's roles. If you ever wanted to see just the definition of assignment football in front of you, on a lot of plays in a lot of offenses, you can see how things play out, what each player's doing. I don't think I've ever seen an offense like the power T where it depends on all 11 people doing exactly what they should do. And then there's a crease this big and it becomes my hands weren't up. There's a crease this big and it becomes an 80-yard touchdown run. And everything is, every would-be tackler is one step away. And that's by design. That's not they did this. It's this guy cut here, this guy blocked that way, everything is just assignment football. And Seneca, Coach Terry Maxwell, they just execute it beautifully. It's really, as a fan of the passing game, more so than the running game, this is a running game I love seeing.
Yeah.
Here's one question I have about Seneca is, they seem set up to possibly even run the table here, looking at the rest of their schedule. Go 9-0. St. Joe, St. Joe O, they're, I think, the only team with a winning record they have left. And if you look at it, they haven't played – they played one close game this year. They played one game within one score. That was up here against Genoa, which, by the way, all 3 of Genoa's losses are by 1 touchdown this year. And they still got Byron and Dixon left, so they got Byron this week. But the question I had about Seneca before that 20-minute ramble was in that close game against Genoa, like how did they look pulling that out? And then because soon once the playoffs start, things are going to start getting a lot closer. I know you were up here for this one. So what did you see in that one in kind of a closer game? I think Genoa kind of got a score late to make it close, but it was still, like that 2-score type game. They're going to have a lot of close games come playoff time, I'd imagine.
Right. I think, and I hate to say it, but I think it's out there. It's not like I'm going to tell opposing, offenses, coordinators what to do against Seneca's defense. But both Genoa and Marquette last week had pretty good success throwing the ball. It's real tough to run against Seneca. I don't know how many rushing yards they're giving up a game. It's probably under 75. They just don't give up a lot on the run, but teams that they've played that have been able to throw the ball a little bit have had some success. I think the young man from Genoa was close to 200 yards passing, I think, and Anthony Couch from Marquette was at 193, I think. So, I mean, that's something that's going to have to, I would say, if there's any like not even a red flag, yellow flag, maybe. Pat,
a slightly less green.
And I know, and you don't want to project things, and there's always that road. I have it in my head because I know they played a couple years ago, if not last year. Rock Ridge has a kid that can throw it all over the place. So does that path line up? I don't know. And I'm sure there's other 2A schools that have some, passing and, here and there, but we'll see.
Hey, buddy, we'll let Steve Susie do the projections around.
I will say this, though. Hey, before I forget, and Terry will kill me for it, but Seneca came into last week with 3 passing yards, and they threw for 14. I mean, they're not 4 wide. If that's like JT was saying, if you're looking for 4 wide and 30 attempts a game, yeah, Seneca's
or 1 wide and 3 attempts.
Maybe the other team, but not Seneca's not going to do it.
One last note on Seneca, and then we should probably get a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk a couple more games down Illinois Valley way. One thing I noticed doing the playoff outlooks that are available on FridayNight.com right now. One thing with Seneca is, when the offseason came, we talked about this bear of a schedule they were putting together. All these returning playoff teams, 8-win teams, a state champion, and all of those teams have had it's not had good years. Seneca is sitting there with 18 playoff points. So, Eddie mentioned the possibility that Seneca could run the table if they could get this one. And I think that's a decent possibility. They might need to get a decent seed, because that currently 18 playoff points, if they end up somewhere in the 20s, mid 20s, that's really low. So when you're put up against, for those of people who aren't like high school football nerds like we are, when it gets to the end of the season, all the 9-0 teams that end up in the same class together, the way they differentiate them is playoff points, which is how many wins everyone that they've played has gotten during the season, the combined wins of their opponents. And so Seneca's is going to be really low. So they're going to lose a lot of those head-to-head matchups for seeds against 9-0 teams. And that's the type of thing that could, certainly you're 9-0, you're going to have a first-round playoff game, no doubt. But that's the type of thing that maybe costs you a third-round playoff game. Maybe you go to another 9-0 team whose schedule fared a little better than yours did. So Seneca I don't want to say they need to win out. That's a dumb thing to say about a 6-0 team, but they do themselves a lot of favors in their playoff draw by winning out.
Yeah. I think, first of all, with you were mentioning at the beginning of the season, we were talking about their schedule. What do you do with that? I mean, you can't help it. On paper, it looked like, some of these teams were, Seneca scheduled them for a reason. They wanted some good games, but it just hasn't, other than when they played them, other teams have done the same thing to them. So,
and let's be fair, 6 of those losses those other teams have are to Seneca. So, Seneca could be 0-6 with 6 more playoff points. Woo!
Yeah.
But I don't think they want that.
Yeah. This week they have St. Bede, which I think, what are they, 2-4? And then, St. Joe Ogden, that's Terry Maxwell's alma mater. So I know he wants, as a coach, you'd love to, it's far removed, but you still want to play good against your old school. They're 4-2, but I think my research, they lost 2 of their last 3, and their 2 wins are against 2 0-6 teams, and 2 more are 3-3. So, they'll have to play well. I'm sure there's no doubt about it.
On both of those.
So, and then Carlisle's 0-6. So you don't look past anybody, but yeah, you're right. I think 9-0, you can't do anything about the playoff points. You can only take care of the team in front of you each week, but yeah, 9-0. And I mean, it's too bad it's not more than just playoff points. It's like the body of work of the team, because if you go watch Seneca play, they're one of the pretty good teams in 2A. It doesn't take very long, one drive on each side of the ball to figure out that. So,
yeah, and the good news is it's not the old days with the mythical state champions. No matter how many playoff points you get, what your seed is, where you are, they're going to play it out on the field. So they'll have their chance. Now would be a great time to take a break. Hawks, could you stick with us and we'll talk a little Marquette?
Yeah.
Awesome.
SGKR Injury Attorneys tackles the toughest cases. I'm Matt Rundio. When life throws a flag, we go on offense to protect your rights. Don't get sidelined. Score a touchdown with SGKR. Visit us at sgkr.law.
At Oliver's, we are proud to serve our community. We serve up great customer service, quality products, ease of shopping, and we serve up delicious barbecued sandwiches at our fundraiser cookouts. So stop by Oliver's, 748 North Brenton and Dixon, and help fund our local clubs and events.
In Illinois and into Iowa, the story of Shaw Media is a story of trust. Since 1851, we've been informing, connecting, and reflecting the communities we serve, large and small, rural and urban, suburban, and river towns alike. With dozens of local newspapers, radio stations, magazines, and specialty brands like Friday Night Drive and Starve Rock Country, we meet people wherever they are. We shine a light on local government. We celebrate Friday night touchdowns. We tell the stories that shape your day, from neighborhood heroes to the Chicago Bears. But what truly sets us apart? It's our people. The award-winning journalists, broadcasters, and storytellers who live here, work here, and care deeply about what matters most to you. We don't just report the news. We're part of the fabric of the places we serve, from the Mississippi to the Illinois, from the Fox all the way to the chain of lakes. Trusted for generations, still earning it every day. Shaw Media, your most trusted local source.
Welcome back to the Corncast Friday Night Drive. The areas around the suburbs. We're here. Eddie Carifio and I are here with Brian Hoxie. And Hox, another team that you've seen probably more than anyone else on our coverage area. I'd say Seneca's on that list. Marquette would probably be one. Marquette 3-3, going to Elmwood Brimfield 3-3. I'm going to be heading to this one. Looks like a really fun one. I'm hoping it turns out as fun on the field as it looks on paper. Kind of Marquette, you have 3 losses and you're kind of like, okay, that's a 500 team. That's the definition of average. Those are 3 good losses, right? I mean, the combined record of their opponents is 17-2, 4-2 Aurora Christian, 7-0 Edgar, Wisconsin, which looks like they might be on their way to another state championship up there, which I think coming into the season, Edgar was tied for the most state championships in Wisconsin football history. So who knows who they're tied with.
I think they had 9. I think they had 9 and 2 in a row or something like that.
Yeah. So it very well could be that they could be all by themselves with the most state championship. And, Marquette lost that game 9-6. And then, their last loss was last week to 6-0 Seneca. So, this Marquette team, while you're sitting there saying 3-3, 500, maybe they're down, maybe they're this or that. Those are 3 good losses and they're in pretty good shape, right?
Yeah. Last week it was against Seneca, it was 20-12 at halftime. I mean, they were in the game, and even in the game, mid third quarter. But the one thing that stood out, like you said, there's 3 losses, 17-2 teams that they've lost to, and on the other side, Elmwood, I think their 3 team wins, those teams are like 5-13. And their losses the teams are 4-14. Now, what does that mean? Not a whole lot, but other than going on the road, that's going to be the tough part for Marquette. But yeah, Anthony Couch, their quarterback, played really well last week, and they didn't really get the running game going like they wanted to. Coach Ken Carlson said second half they got down a little bit. Kind of had to go to the pass a little bit more. But they've got Grant Dose and Jackson Higgins who they'll run over you. I mean, I saw it last week. I mean, they're not looking to like juke or anything. That's kind of Connor Baker's deal. He's their speedster. But the other 2 guys, they're just, big, huge kids that they're just going to try to pound for yardage. So that will be, I think Marquette will try to run the ball more this week than maybe last week. But like I said, the score dictated a lot of what they did in the second half last week.
How big has that emergence of Anthony Couch been? This is a kid who I believe that's it. Not my beat. The late great Charlie Ellerbrock obviously covered a lot of the Marquette stuff, in past years and kind of had, really his finger on the pulse of the team. And we'd kind of hear from him. But like my understanding of, trickle down information. So we played the telephone game a bit, but my understanding was kind of, Anthony Couch maybe wasn't the guy they were, necessarily. He kind of got rushed into that job a little bit, as a sophomore. And, but boy, he's now that he's got almost 2 full seasons under his belt, 3 full seasons, he's been excellent of late. And that emergence with a team that always has been so good at running the ball, so effective, being able to have that 2-tier threat, I think really makes Marquette a dangerous team.
Yeah. Well, I think the last 2 years, Tom Yaps was the coach. Great guy, great coach. Wing T, and yeah, there was some passing options out of it, but the one thing he always told me, when you throw the ball, 3 things can happen, and 2 of them are bad. So they ran the ball, and now new head coach Ken Carlson, who's been with the program for a while, he's a little more. Well, he opens it up. He opened it up a little bit, and I think that Anthony's been able to show what he can do. And I tell you what, there was a couple passes last week. Thread the needle right on the button. Third play of the game, he hits Connor Baker down on a streak, and Connor didn't even have to go lose a stride. I mean, it was right where it needed to be. So, and when you do that, you have to have a line that gives you some time, and they did that for the most part. And he's pretty agile. So if the rush does get to him, he can get out of harm's way and maybe buy some time like he did a couple times last week. So, I've talked to him a couple times. Great kid, good baseball player. He's just an all-around good athlete. So
I think everyone at Marquette's a good baseball player or softball, but I'm sure those girls would be great at baseball too. I think it's
probably, and vice versa.
I just want to point out, I was never a fan of that phrase. The when you throw the ball, 3 things happen, 2 of them are bad. When you run the ball, 2 things can happen, and half of them are bad. I never, and I know coaches love it, but I've never, whatever. And I wanted to make a purple monkey dishwasher joke when you said the telephone game, but I didn't get a chance to jump in. So I just, if we can edit that back in earlier,
that'll be great. That'll be great.
Appreciate it.
Over the top with that dishwasher comment.
Is it eliminator time?
I think so. You know what? Hawks, every week we pick one game. You can't pick or one team to win, one team to lose. You can't repeat for yourself. So far, we're all undefeated. Eddie, how'd the stats look last week?
Last week, who was the guest last week? That was Sam, right?
Sam, I am, yes.
He went with Sterling over Alleman. By the way, all 3 of us, I think they were all running clock games. So I guess you could call those good picks. Sterling over Rock Island Alleman, 55-13 was the final there. He is not eliminated. You went with FCW over West Prairie. That ended up 54-14. And then I had the blowout of the bunch, GK over Rockford Lutheran. That one ended up 63-14. So I kind of thought that it would have been a little more, picks would be getting a little hairier at this point, but I think we all did a pretty good job last week of finding teams we got left.
It's feeling a little hairy this week, though. I don't know what we're going to do in the playoffs. I feel like now I'd like to go back and change. I just got eliminated in my NFL survivor pool. I had the Chiefs on a Monday, which is probably stupid, but I just did not. Look, if your quarterback's going to fall down twice and still run in almost untouched for the game-winning touchdown, then whatever. I wasn't meant to win. I feel like I wish I would have scheduled it out a little better, because I feel like by the second round of the playoffs, if we're still alive, we're just going to be like flipping coins.
Well, they're going to be tough games anyway. So at that point, but so this week, Hawks, why don't you do the honors as the guest and tell us what you got?
Okay. Now I got that note late, so I didn't say I cheated, but I got a team local because I didn't think they'd been picked yet this year, and I saw them last week play really well against a really good team. I'm going to take Marquette unless they've been picked before, and then you guys can go and I'll scramble to find something else.
Nope, you're good, man.
You are good.
I really wanted to find a really obscure one from like downstate, one of those Tuscola, Arcola,
Wars.
I ran out of time, so I just got to kind of and to be honest, I think Marquette. I mean, me and you, JT, discussed a little bit. At first, I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. And then once I did the research and saw him last week, I'm like, yeah, I mean, Seneca makes teams not look as good as they are. And I still thought Marquette looked pretty good, even with, losing to Seneca. So, and, like you said, we're getting towards that time where you need wins. And I over the years, Marquette's found ways to win those games more often than not. So.
That's actually a solid pick, considering it's 2, 3, and 3 teams. It's actually, I think, from how you guys were talking, I think that's a very solid pick.
I'll go on a limb.
Nah, I'm pretty sure you got. I mean, it may not be 63-14, but I think you got it. JT, stealer of my pick.
I sent out my pick, and Eddie's like, "Oh man, I was gonna have that," which likely story. But yeah, I
did forget to include it. I'll say that.
I'm gonna go Seneca over St. Bede. We talked about that one earlier. I saw St. Bede earlier in the week playing a really physical team down in Eureka. I think Seneca's more physical than Eureka. I think St. Bede's going to struggle with them. St. Bede has just struggled against good competition this year. There's no other way to say it. They've played really well in their 2 wins, but those haven't been against really top teams. Seneca is a top team. So I'm going to take the Fighting Irish.
And then there was no rule saying I couldn't pick it, but I wanted to make things, a little different and not, have us pick the same ones. And so I'm going to go Sycamore over LaSalle Peru. Obviously, Sycamore has enjoyed a lot of success in the series. The main reason I didn't go with it in the first place, because actually, if you look at Sycamore's last 2 games, they play Morris and then they play a 1-loss Cahokia team. So, probably not the best pick in something you want a guaranteed right game. So pick them here. But kind of the reason I didn't go with it, I don't know if this is like a slam dunk game, like running clock or, like a 4-touchdown, 5-touchdown win like it's been in the past. I think, I still think it probably ends up in that 35-14 type range, but it's this time of year, anything can happen. And I was looking to maybe stay clear of this one, but I'll take my, I'll go with this one, Sycamore over LaSalle Peru.
I'm sorry I backed you into that. I don't know how that game's going to go. I mean, I think just from the history, you have to say, Sycamore's probably the favorite. I feel like LaSalle Peru is the type of team that's kind of like we talked about Canelan, and not at that level Canelan is, but if Canelan's knocking on the door, maybe LP's coming up the sidewalk. They just turned off the main sidewalk and they're walking up towards the door to knock. I think I would not be stunned at all if LP was in this game to the end and found a way to pull it out. I hope so for their sake. I hope not for Sycamore's sake and your sake for our survivor pool. But I think it could be a really close, hard-fought game. I mean, if LP is ever going to take that step and challenge Sycamore, this might be the year. The Sycamore's had a few more struggles than we're used to seeing in the past. So
that was one of the
a really good football game.
Yeah, when I talked to him this week, he said, this isn't the type of year we've been. Coach Joe Ryan said, it's not the type of year we've been used to having, and saying that about a 3-3 team, where your losses have all been to teams with 5 wins or what, or aside from Muhammad, 2 of the 3 losses have been to Morris and Caneland. So, and then 1 to a Muhammad team that seems to be getting things together at this point. So,
and if you're not offended, Eddie, since we're talking I-8, we can just keep Hawks with us till the end. I think we only have one more game on our docket here, and that was Morris at Ottawa, right? And Hawks has covered Ottawa a couple times. Morris 6-0, Ottawa 2-4. Morris defense has been getting a lot of love lately. After normally everyone talks offense, and everyone did about Morris early, and then kind of it was like, hey, what about the defense? Defense got a lot of love. That offense is putting up 37 points a game against that schedule that Morris has, Eddie. That's quarterback Brady Varner, running back Caden Curran, wide receiver Logan Conroy. Just Morris has been just a machine, offensively, defensively, everything. And as for Ottawa, dealing with a lot of injuries, they just had a lineman go down last week that looks like they're probably lost for the season. So very tough situation for them. But they have players like Owen Sanders, the running back Archer Chekowitz. They have players who've been put up pretty good numbers consistently, playing hard. It's just going to be tough to get anything going against Morris.
Yeah, no, I think Morris is in that category. Team set up to go 9-0 fairly well. They still have obviously Sycamore lurking next week. That one's always dangerous. You don't want to sleep on it, but the way they've been playing is like they're set up to go 9-0. They're set up to go 11-0, 12-0, however many and 0 until they play the private school that probably should have been bumped up a class.
Hey, a lot of them will be bumped up a class this year. Hawks, what do you think of just kind of, what you've seen from Ottawa this year? It's kind of one of those seasons that get off to that 2-0 start, close win over Plano, and then that win over Streeter that always ends up more lopsided than you think it's going to be, as it has happened the last handful of years. Teams that seem like they match up pretty well. And at the end of the day, Ottawa's that one ended up 50-14 or something. Mm-hmm. But since then, been pretty tough on Ottawa. No surprise when you play in the Interstate 8.
Yeah, I think this is week 3, their returning starting quarterback, Mark Munson, got hurt. Take any team in the state and lose your starting quarterback, and it's going to be some adjustments. Now, I will say for Ottawa, over the years, they haven't really struggled the first couple of games. They've either been 2-0 or 1-1, and then they get into I-8, and it kind of shows where they're at. Now, I will say this year, they're getting there. It's, you were talking about that, taking the LPs on the sidewalk. I think Ottawa's at the mailbox getting ready to kind of turn that corner. Not, I know that that's still a ways away, but, that conference is tough. I don't know what to say. Every couple of years I get to cover Morris, and this is no knock against any other school I cover, but I go and watch them play, and it's just like, wow. It's like the levels are very high there. So, let's be honest. I think Ottawa has to play a near perfect game, and Morris would have to really struggle. I mean, that's kind of high school football sometimes, but when you kick off, anything can happen. So we'll see.
I wish this was like college and NFL, so we could be a little meaner toward teams, because I would love the metaphor, like for a really bad team, just through this metaphor. They haven't even gotten the Uber, hasn't even showed up at their own house yet, so they're not even in the neighborhood.
Yeah, no, I think
we're not going to say that about anybody, but
no, for Ottawa, I don't think that's the case. I mean, they're.
Oh no, I didn't mean it for anyone.
No, I know you didn't.
I wanted to keep torturing the metaphor like you guys did.
Yeah. No, I'm actually glad we don't have to do that, to be honest with you. I guess I'm not. That's not my thing, but Morris.
I'm a jerk. We know this.
I mean, Morris has. I mean, the track record is there. It's I guess, and you don't ever want to say this, but you lose to a team like that, and you look at their like, well, we didn't do any worse than anybody else did. So, but yeah, that's a tough matchup for Ottawa, no doubt.
And Eddie, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention one more win and in 4-2 matchup, old rivals, teams we're all familiar with from their old conference affiliations, and who knows, we could become familiar with them again. And that's 4-2 Sterling is going to 4-2 Geneseo. So one of those teams, both those teams having nice seasons. It looks like both of them have a very winnable game coming up here in the final 2 weeks. So I don't know that it's do or die for either of them, but an old matchup, the two teams that used to always be fighting it out in be it the NCIC Northeast or the NCIC Reagan or the Northern Illinois Big 12. Which one were they, Eddie?
West, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Western Sun.
Yeah.
Well,
anyway, it would be nice to see Geneseo. It's nice to see Geneseo kind of bounce back here. I know they've fallen on a little bit of tough times here. So it's the move to the Western Big Six, the last pretty much post-pandemic, more or less. It's nice to see them back in the swing of things.
Yeah.
I think that's a podcast, Hawks. Man, appreciate you showing up.
Thanks. I mean, I get it. It's bottom of the barrel time, but hopefully it didn't ruin it.
Not.
Hopefully it's able to there's not too much editing. It can go on without any problems. So
editing. Thanks, Hawks.
Yep.
So we call that a podcast. JT, you said where you were at this week. I'm at Sycamore. You were at which one?
I have Marquette at Elmwood Brimfield.
Oh, that's right. That should be interesting. How far is Elmwood? I'm just curious.
I'm not sure. About an hour and a half.
Oh,
southwest
enjoy that drive.
Southwest of Peoria somewhere. I've never been, so I'm excited to go to a field I haven't been to before.
I'll be driving 3 minutes from our office up to Sycamore for Sycamore LaSalle this week. As always, thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk next week.